I spent 4 long years pathetically chasing a girl only to be rejected, losing every ounce of my dignity until I was nothing but a local punchline. With a hollow heart, I finally turned away and accepted someone else's affection, genuinely believing I had found a soulmate. I had no idea that every gentle word and romantic gesture she offered was just a scripted routine stolen from someone else's playbook. It wasn't until I uncovered her true intentions that I realized I was merely a stand-in for her marriage rehearsal, never the man she actually intended to save. I had spent 4 years pining for Katarina Vance before I finally let go of that obsession and chose Ava Thompson, the woman who had always been by my side. On the day of our 5th anniversary, I lied about a business trip so I could secretly plan a surprise for her. I never expected that a random twist of fate would lead me to stumble upon a secret Ava had been hiding for years. It turned out that Ava had only pursued me all this time to help the man she actually loved by clearing the obstacles in his path. In that heartbeat, every desire I had to propose to her vanished instantly. I threw the engagement ring directly into the ocean as my heart turned to stone. I turned back toward the city, ready to accept the arranged marriage my family had been pushing for years. As I stood in the hallway of the restaurant, I noticed the VIP lounge door wasn't fully closed, and a sliver of light allowed her voice to drift out perfectly. "Aren't you afraid James will find out you've been faking it and dump you on the spot?" her friend asked. "He wouldn't dare," Ava replied with a smirk. "I saw him browsing engagement rings the other day, so he's likely obsessing over how to pop the question right now." As she spoke, Ava's voice was dripping with an unbearable sense of triumph. After all, she had spent years studying me until she knew my every move. The velvet ring box in my hand suddenly felt like it was burning my skin, and I nearly hurled it across the room. "As long as James stays happy, it's worth it, even if I end up married to someone I don't love," she continued. I stood frozen in the corridor, silent and still, listening to Ava shamelessly confess her devotion to another man. That man was Ethan Reed, her childhood friend with whom she had maintained a suspiciously close bond all these years. When we first started dating, I lost sleep many times over their relationship. Ava used to get so defensive, arguing that if she really wanted Ethan, she wouldn't have spent years chasing me. Looking back now, I realized I was nothing but a clown. The woman who promised to spend her life with me had approached me with a hidden agenda from the very first day. By the time the realization fully sank in, I actually found myself laughing at the absurdity of it all. I didn't storm into the room to start a scene. Instead, I walked downstairs and got into my car. As I drove across the bridge over the harbor, I pulled the ring from my pocket and tossed it into the dark waves below. I let the ring go along with every lingering shred of affection I had for her, purging it all at once. When Ava finally returned home, she was carrying a massive bouquet of vibrant red roses. The moment she saw me sitting on the sofa, she rushed over and thrust the flowers into my lap. "I was so worried your business trip would make you miss our anniversary, but we can always celebrate properly tomorrow," she chirped. I set the bouquet down on the coffee table and looked up at her, noticing she was slightly buzzed from drinks. I remained silent, but Ava didn't seem to mind the lack of response. "I know you hate it when I drink, but it's not every day I get to go out with the girls," she said, sliding onto the sofa next to me. She tilted her head, leaning in to give me a kiss, but I pulled away. I looked at her and asked in a low voice, "What exactly did you and your friends talk about tonight?" "Oh, just typical girl talk. Why are you being so nosy all of a sudden?" Ava laughed, brushing it off. "What's the matter? Are you actually mad at me? Anyway, I picked up a new tie for you." She handed me a small gift box, her eyes sparkling as she watched for my reaction. "So, where's my present?" "You better not forget that next month on the 10th is a big day," she said, playfully puffing out her cheeks as if she were about to throw a tantrum. I just shook my head slowly because I hadn't forgotten at all. The irony was that the 10th of next month was the exact date my family had set for my wedding to someone else. Once we were in the bedroom and Ava went to the bathroom, I finally opened the box she had given me. It was a purple silk tie, even though my favorite color has always been blue. Purple, however, was the color Ethan Reed had been obsessed with since we were kids. Just then, her phone on the nightstand vibrated with a notification, and I couldn't help but glance at the screen. The contact was saved under the name My One and Only, and the latest message read, "Ava, I want a divorce." I froze in shock, my heart hammering as I reached for the phone to unlock it, but the screen flashed a password error. Back when we first started dating, Ava made a big show of changing her passcode to my birthday, claiming she wanted me to feel completely secure. Because I trusted her, I never once felt the need to snoop through her things. But tonight, when I entered my birthday, the phone rejected it twice. Before my final attempt, a memory of a photo Ethan Reed posted on Facebook flashed through my mind. I remember the day Ava told me she had to go help him celebrate his birthday. She left alone and didn't stumble back home until the next morning. We had a massive argument about it because I just wanted her to set some healthy boundaries with other men. That was back in October, and the memory was vivid in my mind. I tried entering Ethan's birthday instead, and with a soft chime, the phone unlocked instantly. The moment the home screen appeared, I felt a wave of nausea rather than relief. I stared at the app icons before opening iMessage, only to find that Ethan was the only person she had pinned to the top. I forced myself to scroll through their conversation history from the past week. There wasn't a single explicitly sexual word, but the emotional intimacy in their messages made me feel like I didn't even know the woman sleeping in the next room. I couldn't remember when our own conversations had dwindled down to nothing but boring logistics like what to order for dinner. Whenever I sent her a link or a text, she'd dismiss me with a quick, "I'm busy, I'll check later," and never follow up. But with Ethan, she was practically live-blogging her life, sharing everything from what she had for lunch to the stray cat she saw on the sidewalk. Ethan's most recent message was a complaint that the purple tie she bought him was ugly, suggesting she just give it to someone else. It hit me like a physical blow. The gift I didn't even like was actually just a hand-me-down that another man had rejected. By the time Ava walked out of the bathroom, I had already placed the phone exactly where I found it. Her phone rang, and she answered it, listening in silence while giving me a look of feigned regret. "There's an emergency at the hospital, and they need me in surgery, so go ahead and sleep without me," she lied. Before I could even get a word out, she snatched her car keys and sprinted out the door. The sound of the door clicking shut left the apartment in a deafening, terrifying silence. I had already seen the caller ID when the phone lit up. It was Ethan, not the hospital. She didn't even need to bother with the elaborate lies anymore. To be honest, Ava wasn't my first choice. That was Katarina Vance. During our freshman year of college, I accidentally fell into the campus lake and nearly drowned. By the time I regained consciousness, everyone told me that Katarina was the one who had pulled me out. Driven by gratitude, I began pursuing her, even though she had a reputation for being an untouchable ice queen. As the months passed, my gratitude transformed into a deep, genuine love. The problem was that Katarina's heart had always belonged to Ethan Reed. After 4 years of being mocked as a pathetic simp, I finally gave up and turned to Ava, who had been quietly following me all that time. She really had put in the work back then. She used to bribe my roommates just to get a copy of my class schedule and even enrolled in the same electives as me. Every fall, she would wait outside my dorm with a hot cup of coffee just to be the first person to see me. I was eventually won over by her sheer persistence and finally accepted her confession on the day we graduated. During the 3 years we lived together, Ava never missed a chance to celebrate a milestone. She always had a gift ready for every holiday and anniversary, though, looking back, she never actually bought anything I truly liked. My friends and family kept badgering me to put a ring on her finger, terrified I'd let such a perfect girl get away. It's a shame that our entire relationship was constructed on a foundation of lies. I couldn't sleep that night, so I ended up scrolling through Facebook. The most recent post was from Ethan, featuring a photo of him at a dimly lit bar. The caption read, "There will always be one person waiting for me in the exact same spot." I clicked on the post, and a video began to play, and I immediately recognized Ava's voice in the background. She was whispering words of comfort to her recently separated Ethan, saying, "Don't be sad. Even if your marriage ends, you'll always have me." I felt like I was being slowly tortured as I swiped through the rest of the photos. I listened to that single sentence on a loop until my phone finally died. I forced myself to close my eyes, though sleep didn't come easily. Ava didn't drag her exhausted self back home until noon the next day, right as I was heading out to take out the trash. She glanced at the heavy black trash bag in my hand with a confused look. Is the apartment really that dirty? You shouldn't be doing the heavy lifting. We could just hire a maid for this stuff, she said. You're right, I replied flatly. I won't be doing this ever again. In truth, there was no later for us anymore. That trash bag was filled with every single gift she had given me over the last 5 years. When we first started dating, Ava used to give me these incredibly complex jigsaw puzzles. I had always assumed she was the one who liked them, especially since she had a 10-foot puzzle framed on her own wall. It wasn't until I went through Ethan's Facebook feed that I realized he was the one with the actual puzzle obsession. The bag also contained cedar-scented colognes and professional hiking gear. Every gift Ava had ever given me was something Ethan Reed happened to love. For 5 years, my friends envied me, thinking I had found the most thoughtful and romantic girlfriend in the world. From where I stood now, it was clear that Ava was just using me as a vessel for the love she couldn't give to Ethan. She was trying to mold me into a carbon copy of him. I felt like an idiot for ever mistaking her lazy, recycled gestures for genuine devotion. Once the veil was lifted, my only desire was to scrub every trace of our past away. After Ava came back inside from dumping the trash, I handed her a beautifully wrapped gift box. I thought we agreed I wouldn't get my present until next month, she asked with a bright smile. As she reached to tear the paper, I stopped her. Don't open it until the 10th, I said firmly. She gave me a puzzled look, but eventually complied, placing the box on the desk in the study. When she emerged from the room again, she was waving 2 concert tickets in the air. You've seemed a bit down lately, so I pulled some strings and got tickets for your favorite artist, she said with a grin. The show starts soon, so we should probably get moving. I wanted to turn her down, but the words wouldn't come out, so I just nodded. Once we got to the arena, I realized our seats weren't even in the same section. Ava insistently gave me the VIP seat right by the stage while she took a spot further back in the mezzanine, and I didn't bother to argue. During the intermission, Ava's face suddenly flashed onto the jumbo screen, and she wasn't alone. Ethan was standing right next to her. In front of 20,000 people, the two of them shared a long, passionate kiss. Even though I had already checked out of the relationship, seeing that still felt like a dull knife twisting in my chest. I couldn't stomach the second half of the show, so I left the arena early. I wandered into a nearby bakery and sat down, hoping some sugar might take the edge off my misery. I never expected to walk right into Ava and Ethan for the second time that night. Ava was expertly ordering all the seasonal specials and sliding them toward Ethan like they were precious offerings. When Ethan offered her a bite of cake, she didn't pull away. She leaned in and laughed with a joy I hadn't seen in years. It was jarring because, around me, Ava always claimed she hated high-calorie sweets. She used to look at me with pure disgust whenever I reached for a dessert, telling me that grown men shouldn't have a sweet tooth. She'd say that sugary junk would just make me look unattractive and forbade me from ordering it. I had actually listened to her, going 5 full years without a single gram of sugar. Apparently, those rules didn't apply when Ethan Reed was in the picture. I forced down the last bite of my cake, but the sweetness had turned into ash in my mouth. When Ava finally showed up at home with Ethan in tow, she didn't even look guilty. Ethan had a massive fight with his wife and got kicked out. So he's going to crash here for a few days. Don't make a big deal out of it, she said. Why stop there? Should I just move my stuff so he can have the master bedroom? I replied sarcastically. My mock generosity clearly hit a nerve because Ava's face darkened instantly. James, are you seriously still bitter about Katerina choosing Ethan over you? I'm the one who should be annoyed that you're still thinking about your ex. Yet you're here, catching an attitude with me. I'm not mad at all. I just think we should be hospitable to our guests, I said with a shrug. Ava's face flushed bright red as she let out a sharp huff, grabbing Ethan by the arm and dragging him straight into our bedroom without another word. A few minutes later, she tossed a fresh comforter at my feet. Since you're being so helpful, you can sleep in the study tonight, she snapped. And where will you be? I asked. Are you just going to share the bed with Ethan to save us the trouble of making up the guest room? I shot back, my voice completely devoid of emotion. Ava glared at me with a fury that looked like it could melt steel, but then the fire in her eyes suddenly died down. Did you see me and Ethan on the screen at the concert last night? She asked tentatively. Don't sweat it, I don't mind. I interrupted. After all, you guys are just friends, right? I cut off her pathetic attempt at an excuse before she could even start. I'm glad you're being mature about it, she said, looking relieved. Everyone was just cheering, and it would have been so awkward to say no with all those cameras on us. I just nodded, completely blank, as I listened to her spin a lie that even a child wouldn't believe. I picked up my blankets and headed for the study. As I lay there, the sounds of their laughter and playful banter drifted through the walls, strangely serving as a lullaby that lulled me into a heavy sleep. When I woke up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, I found Ethan still sprawled on the sofa, engrossed in a video game. Ava was curled up with her head in his lap, looking perfectly at home, and she didn't even flinch when she saw me standing there. Ethan paused his game and stood up to light a cigarette. Katerina and I are almost finished, he sneered. It looks like you're still just a pathetic loser who settles for my leftovers. And as for Ava, she only played house with you to keep me happy, he continued, blowing smoke in my direction. One word from me, and she'd drop you in a heartbeat. It finally clicked. Ethan had known about Ava's scheme the entire time. I was the only one who had been left in the dark. Then I'll leave, I said, my voice as flat as a desert road. Ava, who had drifted off on his lap, sat up and rubbed her eyes, looking completely disoriented. The second she saw me, she bolted upright. What are you doing up so late? She stammered. Before I could respond, Ethan waited until she looked away and pressed the lit end of his cigarette directly into his own palm. He let out a loud, dramatic hiss of pain, sending Ava into a panic as she reached for him. Ethan immediately snatched his hand away and hid it behind his back, playing the martyr. It's nothing. I just lost my balance and tripped, Ethan lied, casting a fearful glance in my direction. When Ava saw the fresh burn on the back of his hand, she turned on me like a cornered animal. Are you out of your mind, James? If you have a problem, take it out on me. Why would you attack Ethan? Just leave it. Ava, don't argue on my account. I'll just find a hotel for the night, Ethan said, sounding like a saint. He was playing the peacemaker while simultaneously pouring gasoline on the fire. Ava's expression grew cold and hard as she pointed a finger at me. Apologized to Ethan. Now, her voice was a low, vibrating growl of fury. Why should I? I didn't do a damn thing, I said, refusing to back down. Ava's jaw was set so tight I thought her teeth might crack. I could see the pulse thumping in her temple. If I hadn't woken up when I did, you probably would have beaten him half to death, she hissed. I never realized you were so malicious. I'm honestly disgusted by you. If you don't apologize right this second, we are finished. I searched Ava's eyes, desperately looking for even a microscopic spark of affection, but I found nothing but cold resentment. She was so blinded by her protectiveness of Ethan that she missed the most obvious fact of all. I don't even smoke. I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do, I said, my voice cracking slightly as I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. Fine, it's just a little burn. He might have a scar to remember his little performance by, I added. Standing safely behind her, Ethan let out a silent, mocking laugh. As I mentioned the scar, Ethan gave me a smug, taunting smirk. Are you really going to refuse to apologize? Ava asked one last time. I gave her the same answer. Fine, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, have it your way. Before I could even react, she lunged toward the kitchen island and grabbed a paring knife, dragging the blade across my forearm in one swift, violent motion. If you won't apologize for hurting him, then you can feel exactly what he felt, she screamed. I clutched my arm as hot blood began to pour through my fingers, splashing onto the hardwood floor in heavy drops. Without a word of regret, Ava grabbed her coat and followed Ethan out the door. Her parting words were a cold command for me to stay home and think about my attitude problems. I grabbed a clean towel to put pressure on the gash and calmly dialed 911. Later, as I was sitting in the ER getting stitches, I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh when I reached the signature line on the forms. The doctor looked at me with a frown and asked, "How did you get a cut this deep? And why is no one here with you?" "The person I thought was my family gave me this wound," I replied. Seeing the pity in his eyes, I clarified, "Actually, she's my ex-girlfriend now, so I'm officially on my own." Ava didn't show her face at the apartment for the next few days. If I wanted to know where she was, I had to check Ethan Reed's Facebook page. While she was busy ghosting me, she was perfectly happy to go hiking and watch the sunrise with him. She even posted a public status offering a massive retainer for the best divorce attorney in the state. Ethan replied in the comments with a joke, "Are you in that much of a hurry for me to be a single man again?" Ava didn't even try to deny it. She just responded with a blushing heart emoji. I hit the like button and left a drippingly sarcastic comment wishing them a long and fertile life together. I closed the app and looked at the plane ticket sitting on the desk. It was the 9th. As I was throwing my things into a suitcase, Ava burst through the front door, looking ready for a fight. "That Facebook post was a joke, James. Do you really have to be so dramatic and ruin everyone's mood?" she demanded. I replayed the last few years in my head and let out a dry, mirthless laugh. "What? Am I not allowed to have a sense of humor too?" I asked. Ava was momentarily speechless before she awkwardly shifted gears. "Are you going on another business trip? How long will you be gone this time?" "I have no idea," I said. "How can you not know? It's your job, James. Stop using these fake business trips as an excuse to avoid me," she said, taking a deep breath and waving her hand as if she were shooing away a fly. "Whatever, go if you want. Maybe some space will help us both cool off," she said. "You always blow these tiny things out of proportion, and honestly, I don't know how I'm supposed to marry someone so unstable." "Then don't," I replied simply. "You're free to choose not to marry me." Ava's eyes widened in genuine shock. "Do you even hear yourself right now? I know you've been planning a proposal for months, James. Are you really going to throw that away just because you're throwing a tantrum? Just go to the airport before you miss your flight." She began physically pushing me toward the door, as if getting me out of the house would somehow erase everything I had just said. I looked back at the apartment, which was perfectly clean but felt utterly hollow. "Don't forget to open your gift tomorrow," I reminded her quietly. "I won't," she said, and the mention of a gift finally brought a bit of color back to her cheeks. She looked away, a small, shy smile playing on her lips, and I could tell exactly what she was thinking. She definitely thought there was a diamond ring waiting for her in that box. It was a shame the ring was currently at the bottom of the Charleston Harbor, and all she had left was an empty velvet case. For once, her usually short temper was nowhere to be found. She stayed in the doorway, watching me until I reached the elevator. Just as the doors were sliding shut, I heard her whisper, "James, I'll give you my answer as soon as you get back." She had no idea that I was never coming back. She did end up getting married, just like she wanted, but the groom wasn't the man she expected. After I left that night, Ava stayed awake until dawn. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she had a nagging feeling that her perfect little world was starting to unravel. Aside from our recent arguments, nothing seemed out of place, yet she couldn't shake her unease. The moment the clock struck midnight, Ava rushed into the study and pulled the gift box from the desk drawer, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. She had known for months that I was planning to propose. Seeing the familiar shape of the velvet ring box brought a triumphant, sugary smile to her face. But when she finally clicked the latch and flipped it open, there was nothing inside but empty space. At first, she panicked and started searching the floor, thinking the diamond must have slipped out. All she found was that purple tie she had gifted me, sitting right next to the empty box. She was momentarily confused, but she managed to talk herself out of her own doubts. "That's strange. Why does everything I give him end up back on my desk?" she muttered to herself. But the oddity didn't dampen her spirits for long. She convinced herself that the empty box was just a clever teaser for a grand proposal I was planning for her return. Ava took a curated photo of the empty ring box and posted it to Facebook with the caption, "I guess I'm officially a bride-to-be." When someone commented asking if she and Ethan were finally making it official, she snapped back at them, making it very clear that I was the one she was marrying. It wasn't until she walked back into the living room that she noticed the massive, dark stain on the sofa. She clearly hadn't realized how deep she'd cut me that night. The blood had dried into a grim, brownish-red patch that had soaked through nearly half the cushion. The paring knife she'd used to slash my arm was still lying on the floor, a cold reminder of her violence. For the first time, the reality of what she had done seemed to sink in. She spent the rest of the night calling my phone over and over again. Every call went straight to my cold, mechanical voicemail. She opened iMessage and had to scroll past a dozen messages from Ethan before she even found our conversation. She sat there for an hour, typing out apologies only to delete them and start over. Eventually, she sent a single text. "Does it still hurt?" The only response she got was a bright red exclamation mark indicating the message had been blocked. She looked up and scanned the room, finally noticing that every single one of my personal belongings had vanished. She tore the apartment apart, checking every closet and drawer, until she realized I had scrubbed every trace of my existence from our home. She collapsed onto the floor, her eyes glazed and hollow. When her phone finally buzzed, she lunged for it, hoping it was me. It wasn't me. It was Ethan, asking if she was free to come to the courthouse with him while he filed his divorce papers. For the first time in her life, Ava, who had always been at Ethan's beck and call, told him no. Panic finally set in, and she began frantically calling every mutual friend we had, begging for any information on where I might have gone. She was desperate to get me back, but by then, my plane had already touched down in Atlanta. As I walked through the arrivals gate, I saw a girl holding a sign with my name on it. Even though we had never officially met, there was something hauntingly familiar about her. I walked toward her with my suitcase, noticing that her eyes looked like she had been crying. "How is your arm?" she asked immediately. In my rush to leave, I'd forgotten to wear long sleeves to hide the jagged scar from the knife. Flustered by her directness, I started to stammer out an apology for my appearance. "No, that's not what I meant," she said, her voice soft and urgent. "I just wanted to know if it hurt when it happened." Her name was Bianca Hayes. Her nose was pink from the cold, and her eyes were filled with a level of genuine concern I hadn't felt in years. As her cool fingertips gently brushed against the fresh scab on my arm, a strange, warm sensation began to spread through my chest. "It doesn't hurt much anymore," I said, shaking my head. "The worst part is already over." Bianca didn't care about her makeup or looking perfect. Her first priority was getting me checked into a hotel and finding me some hot food. After a warm breakfast, I finally felt like I was starting to breathe again. "A girl is thoughtful as you must have guys lining up to date her," I noted. "So why choose to marry a guy you've never even met?" I asked, my cynicism from Ava's betrayal still lingering. "My parents were pushing the whole arranged marriage thing too," she admitted, "but there's more to it than that." Bianca looked up at me with a knowing smile. "Who told you we've never met?" "I'm the one who pulled you out of the lake back in college," she said. When she laughed, her entire face lit up with a radiance that was almost blinding. I stared into those eyes and suddenly realized why they looked so familiar. I stood up abruptly. "It was you? You're the one who saved me?" I asked. "Of course it was me," she teased. "You were splashing around and gasping for air, so hard you actually scratched me right by my eye." Bianca pointed to a faint, tiny scar near her temple, and my mind went blank. I had spent years believing Katarina Vance was my savior, and I'd never once thought to question it. "I honestly thought you'd come find me to say thank you, or maybe offer to marry me right then and there," she joked. She gave a little half-laugh that carried a hint of truth. "But when I asked around, I heard you were already head over heels for someone else, so I didn't want to get in the way." Her voice trailed off with a touch of lingering sadness. "When my parents first mentioned an arranged marriage, I fought them tooth and nail," she continued. "But the second I saw your name on the file, I said yes." My throat felt tight, and I struggled to find my voice. "So, how long have you actually liked me?" I asked. "It started the summer after high school," she said. "I was hiking alone in Yellowstone and got bitten by a snake. You were the one who stopped and helped me, even sucking the venom out of the wound." Bianca looked at me, her eyes shimmering like a clear night sky. I might not even be alive if you hadn't been there, she whispered. As for when I fell for you, I think it was the exact moment I realized the guy who made me feel so safe and happy was the same man I was destined to marry. I was completely speechless, but Bianca decided that now wasn't the time for a trip down memory lane. She looked up at me with a playful spark in her eyes. Listen, future husband, the most important thing right now is for you to get cleaned up so you can walk into that ballroom and stun every guest there. She took my hand and led me toward the dressing suite. Once we were both ready, the ceremony began. I stood at the end of the aisle, watching Bianca walk toward me in a custom white gown that made her look like an angel. Just as we were about to exchange rings, a piercing scream shattered the music. I object to this wedding, a voice cried out. It was Ava. She was still wearing the same clothes from the night I left, and they were wrinkled and disheveled. I could still see the dark, dried bloodstains on her sleeve from the night she'd cut me. She sprinted up the aisle and threw herself between Bianca and me. James, I am not letting you marry anyone else, she declared, her voice trembling with desperation. I looked at her with nothing but pure exhaustion and disgust. What are you doing here, Ava? I asked coldly. Her eyes welled up instantly, and tears began to stream down her face. How can you be so cruel, James? You snuck off to marry some stranger, and now you're talking to me like I'm a villain? She seemed to grow more indignant with every word, despite the fact that she was sobbing uncontrollably. In the past, her tears were my weakness. No matter who was at fault, I was always the one to cave in. But those days were officially over. I had absolutely zero empathy left for her, and my only goal was to move on with my life. Give a rest, Ava. Isn't Ethan Reed getting his divorce? You should be focused on how to finally become his wife instead of bothering me, I said. I signaled for the security guards to step in and escort her out. Ava began to struggle wildly, knocking a glass of red wine off a nearby table and sending shards of glass flying everywhere. James, I don't give you permission. You aren't allowed to marry her, she screamed. She kept shrieking my name, begging me to call off the ceremony until the guards finally hauled her out of the room. Once the heavy doors closed and muffled her screams, I turned back to see Bianca, who had remained perfectly calm and silent through the entire scene. She wasn't even angry. She just squeezed my hand and reached for the microphone. As the guests looked on in confusion, she spoke with total composure. Please forgive the interruption. That was actually a piece of performance art we planned to symbolize leaving the past behind and starting fresh, she lied smoothly. We wanted to demonstrate that our marriage will be able to weather any storm and remain peaceful, she finished. The room erupted in applause, and I even heard some guests whispering about how creative the ceremony was. I dropped back down to one knee to finish the vows that had been so rudely interrupted. I could feel Ava's eyes on me through the glass doors as I slid the ring onto Bianca's finger. In that moment, we were officially husband and wife. I saw Ava's face contort in agony as I kissed my new bride, while the guards kept her from making another scene. Even with the unexpected drama, the wedding turned out to be more perfect than I ever imagined. For the reception, Bianca changed into a stunning red evening gown, and I couldn't even pretend to hide how breathtaking I thought she looked. She linked her arm with mine and introduced me to her entire extended family with a glowing smile. After several rounds of champagne, I started feeling a bit lightheaded and made an excuse to step out into the quiet corridor for some fresh air. I was shocked to find Ava leaning against the wall, waiting for me. James, please just tell me this whole thing is a joke. Tell me it isn't real, she pleaded, her shoulders shaking as her voice cracked. Her eyes were bloodshot and swollen from hours of crying. The wedding is absolutely real, Ava. Bianca is my wife, and she's the one I'm spending my life with, I said firmly, hoping the cold truth would finally snap her back to reality. I had seriously underestimated how delusional she could be. Ava lifted her hand to show me the ring box I had left in the study. But you left this for me. You wouldn't have left the box if you didn't still love me, she argued. I let out a sharp, mocking laugh. That ring is sitting at the bottom of the ocean, Ava. Do you really think I'm playing games with you right now? I asked. She looked momentarily stunned, realizing her proof was nothing but an empty box, but she quickly doubled down on her hysteria. I literally saw you at the jeweler picking out a ring. Why would you just throw it away? Do you really hate me that much? She sobbed, looking at me with a desperate, pathetic hope. I decided it was time to end her delusions once and for all. Giving my wife a ring intended for a woman like you would have been a curse. She deserves so much better than your leftovers, I said. And what about my feelings? Do you really not care that you're breaking my heart? Or the last 5 years, even 4, she wailed. She stood there shaking, demanding an explanation. I didn't know her. I wasn't about to let her interrogate me like a criminal in the middle of my own wedding. How about you answer a question for me instead? I countered. Did it ever hurt you to spend 5 years faking a life with me just so Ethan and Katerina would stay together? Ava's breath hitched, and she looked at me with a mix of horror and dawning regret. You knew, she stammered. Every bit of it, I replied. If I weren't the one she had spent years deceiving, I might have actually found her desperate attempt to save our love moving. I let out a dry laugh that was mostly directed at my own stupidity. It's funny, really. If I weren't the victim of your little game, I'd almost be impressed by your acting, I said. But James, we've been together for 5 years. I grew to love you for real. How can you just walk away like none of it mattered? She cried. I know I went too far lately, and I'm so sorry. I'll never speak to Ethan again, I promise. Please, just forgive me, she begged. Her voice was so shattered and desperate that, for a split second, she almost sounded like someone worth pitying. But as I stood there, I realized that seeing her in this state didn't hurt me anymore. When the love dies, the hate usually follows it into the grave. Everything we had was built on a lie. Ava, I'm never going to forgive you, and there is 0 chance of us ever being together again. Don't ever contact me again. With that, I turned my back on her and walked away. I nearly collided with Bianca as I rounded the corner. She glanced toward Ava, who was collapsed against the wall, sobbing into her hands, and then she silently took my arm to lead me back to the party. Suddenly, Ava came sprinting around the corner, her hand raised to slap Bianca across the face. I reacted instantly, pulling Bianca behind me before the blow could land. What the hell is wrong with you? I roared, my remaining patience finally snapping into pure rage. I'm a crazy one? You're the one throwing away 5 years for a stranger, she screamed. You'd seriously rather be with her than me? Do you really find me that repulsive, James? I stood there for a few seconds, looking her dead in the eye, and answered in a voice that was eerily calm. Yeah, Ava, you're exhausting, I said. When I actually loved you, you treated me like an inconvenience and took everything I gave you for granted. It's too late for regrets now. Ava's mouth hung open, but no words came out. I was just so incredibly tired of the drama and didn't want to waste another second of my wedding night on her. It's over, Ava. Leave us alone. Please, James, I'll do anything. I know I messed up. Just give me one more chance, she pleaded, her knuckles turning white as she gripped my sleeve. The second I saw that ring box, I knew I wanted to be your wife. It was always you, I swear. A year ago, those words would have been everything I ever wanted to hear. Now, they didn't even register. I felt no joy, no triumph, and certainly no love. I took a step back, physically distancing myself from her desperate grasp. I'm a married man now, Ava, and I intend to be faithful to my wife. Your regrets are your own problem to deal with, not mine. I'm never going to forgive you, I said. I took Bianca's hand and walked back toward the music and the people who actually cared about us. I foolishly thought that would be the end of it, but Ava wasn't about to let me go that easily. She decided to play the long game, even going so far as to buy the property right next to our new home in Savannah. It didn't matter if I was out for an early morning jog or a sunset stroll with my wife. Every time I left the house or pulled into the driveway, I could feel her eyes watching me from behind her curtains. She didn't actually do anything illegal. She just stood there at a distance, watching like a ghost. Being constantly monitored without any way to stop, it was becoming an unbearable weight on my life. One afternoon, I caught her on the security camera leaving a package on my doorstep. I marched outside, catching her just as she was straightening up. Take your junk and get off my property, I barked. I swiped the box off the porch and hurled it into the driveway, the paper tearing open to reveal a high-end silk tie. It was blue, my actual favorite color. "James, please, I just wanted to give you the 5-year anniversary gift you actually deserved," she whispered. "I hate blue," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "That's a lie. Your office folders are blue. Your computer background is blue. Even all your favorite Lego sets are blue. Why are you lying to me?" she cried, her voice rising in frustration. Ava bit her lip, looking at me like I was the one being unfair. "So you didn't notice? Then tell me, Ava, in the 5 years we were together, did you ever give me a single thing that I actually liked?" I challenged. Ava froze as if I'd physically struck her. She scrambled to pick up the mangled gift box and retreated toward her house in a blind panic. Just as she was leaving, Bianca pulled into the driveway, catching the tail end of the confrontation. I noticed Bianca quickly hide something behind her back as she got out of the car. I took a long, steadying breath, not wanting to let my anger at Ava ruin our evening. "Hey, you're back early," I said, try to sound normal. Bianca nervously licked her lips, looking a bit shy. "I wanted to surprise you with some flowers, but I think I might have picked the wrong ones," she said softly. She pulled a bouquet of vibrant blue baby's breath from behind her back, her shoulders slumped in a gesture of tiny defeat. "I'm so sorry. I should have checked with you first," she whispered. I reached out and took the bouquet from her hands. "I love them, Bianca. This is the best gift I've received in years," I said. Blue baby's breath was a rare find, and its meaning, trust, and living for the moment felt like it was written just for us. The symbolism behind her simple gesture was exactly what I needed to finally wash away the bitterness of my past and believe in love again. "Really? But I just heard you tell her that you hated blue," Bianca said, a bit confused. As soon as she mentioned Ava, a flicker of worry crossed her face. I pulled her close. "She doesn't even exist in the same world as you, Bianca. Your love is the only one that's real, and I'd be happy with anything you gave me. I promised." "Are you serious?" she asked, her entire face brightening. In that moment, I finally noticed the 2 tiny, perfect dimples that appeared on her cheeks whenever she truly smiled. She was so adorable that I couldn't resist reaching out to gently pinch her cheek. Her skin was even softer than I had imagined. Bianca's face turned a deep shade of crimson, and she began playfully pushing me toward the front door. "Stop it. The neighbors are going to see. This is so embarrassing," she giggled. "Let them look. We're married, so I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to flirt with my wife," I said. As soon as the words left my mouth, the air between us seemed to hum with a new kind of electricity. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, the rest of the world just faded away. I can't even remember which one of us moved first, but I'll never forget how that night seemed to stretch on forever in the most gentle and beautiful way. After that evening, Ava finally stopped haunting our doorstep. Bianca and I discovered we had so much in common, and our personalities clicked so perfectly that our bond grew deeper with every passing day. It wasn't until a college reunion a few years later that I finally heard what had happened to Ava. She had apparently poured all her energy into helping Ethan Reed finalize his divorce. However, Ethan's ex-wife, Katerina Vance, was convinced that Ava was the one who had destroyed her marriage. Driven by rage, Katerina hired a group of thugs to corner Ava and teach her a lesson. The attack was so brutal that Ava was left partially paralyzed, unable to ever walk again. She was destined to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. Ava's family was naturally out for blood and immediately filed a lawsuit against Katerina. Everyone assumed Ethan would be the star witness for Ava. But in a shocking turn of events, Ethan betrayed Ava at the last second, begging her to drop the charges against Katerina. It was in that courtroom that Ava finally faced the truth. Ethan had never loved her, not even for a second. Her dream of him leaving his wife to marry her had been nothing but a delusional fantasy. Ethan's heart had never belonged to anyone but Katerina. Consumed by bitterness, Ava refused to back down and pushed the case until Katerina was sentenced to 6 years in prison. But Ava's thirst for revenge wasn't satisfied just by seeing Katerina in prison. She couldn't stand the thought of Ethan walking away unscathed. She used her family's connections to get him fired and then systematically manipulated him into a gambling addiction. Ethan eventually hit rock bottom, racking up millions in debt. Rumor has it that on the day he died, his final words were a string of curses directed at Ava. On New Year's Eve, my phone rang with an unrecognized number. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end before a familiar voice finally spoke. "James, if I hadn't picked up that knife that night, would we still have had a chance?" she whispered. Just as she finished the sentence, a massive firework exploded in the night sky outside my window. I waited for the echoes of the celebration to fade before I gave her a 3-word answer. Not a chance. Even after all these years, Ava still didn't understand the real reason I had walked away. There were 1,000 reasons, but they all boiled down to one simple truth. You can't receive a heart if you aren't willing to give one in return. She had spent 5 years giving me nothing but lies while expecting me to hand her my entire soul. A human heart can only take so much damage before it simply goes numb and dies. I decided that staying with her while she slowly chipped away at my spirit wasn't an option anymore. I chose to leave so I could find someone whose heart belonged only to me. Ava began sobbing so hard on the other end of the line that she could barely breathe. Just before I hung up, I heard a faint, broken whisper, "I'm so sorry." In that moment, the final spark of the firework show faded into the dark. I looked out into the yard and saw Bianca waving at me to join her. Suddenly, a new round of fireworks lit up the sky, casting a beautiful, multicolored glow across my wife's face. Her smile was more brilliant than any explosion in the sky. I handed her a lit sparkler, and she began to wave it through the air, drawing glowing lines of pure joy in the darkness. "Look at the trail. Doesn't it look just like a shooting star?" she asked, pointing excitedly at the streak of light. I just smiled and nodded, my heart finally at peace. Bianca suddenly stopped and looked me in the eye with a soft, earnest expression. "This is our very first New Year's together," she said. I stepped closer and took her hand in mine. "And I'm going to be right here for every single one that follows. I promised." "James," she whispered, leaning her head on my shoulder. The snow was still clinging to the roof of our home, but the warmth between us was all I needed. The life Bianca and I have ahead of us is going to be a long and beautiful journey. Ethan Reed and I grew up together, and for the longest time, I convinced myself we were destined to be together. But the truth was that he never saw me as anything more than a younger sister. I used to tell myself he was just too shy to admit his true feelings. It wasn't until college, when he officially started dating Katarina Vance, that I realized his rejections had been heartbreakingly sincere. At that time, the only thing standing in the way of his perfect relationship was a guy named James Miller. James was Katarina's most persistent admirer and the one person who could actually make Ethan feel insecure. Every time we went out, Ethan would get completely trashed just to deal with the stress of the rivalry. I remember one night when he was stumbling drunk and muttered something to me. If James would just find a girlfriend of his own, my life would be so much easier, he'd said. I took those words to heart and decided to take matters into my own hands. I began studying how Ethan pursued Katarina and used those exact same tactics on James. My plan actually worked, and James finally agreed to be my boyfriend at our graduation party. It was the 99th time I'd asked him out. In the beginning, the way he doted on me was so intense that it actually made me feel uncomfortable. I struggled with a massive sense of guilt for a while, but eventually, that guilt curdled into a strange kind of resentment. I started picking fights over nothing, and I'd even mock him just for wanting to enjoy a piece of cake. He would look at me with these heartbreaking, kicked puppy eyes, but I was too proud to ever say I was sorry. Eventually, James stopped bringing me sweets altogether, and he even gave up his own favorite fruit snacks just to stop my nagging. Despite how poorly I treated him, he never stopped being the kindest man I'd ever known. I think I just got spoiled by his devotion, and I honestly believe that no matter how much I screwed up, James would always be there to forgive me. So when I heard the news that Ethan was finally planning to get a divorce, I rushed to see him. I needed to know if it was true, because deep down, He was still the boy I had loved since we were children. I had spent my whole life dreaming that I would be the one standing at the altar with Ethan Reed. While James was quietly distancing himself from our relationship, I was too blinded by my own obsession to even notice. I ended up physically hurting the only man who ever truly loved me over a ridiculous lie, and I pushed him so far away that he finally disappeared. It was just like that concert. James had to stand there and watch me kiss Ethan in front of the whole world. Now, the roles have reversed, and I'm the one standing in the shadows watching the man I love place a wedding ring on another woman's finger. The karma for betraying a heart like his came for me faster than I ever expected, and now I'm a broken, paralyzed woman. I made sure that the woman who attacked me and the man who turned his back on me both paid a heavy price, but my heart still feels completely hollow. I live like a ghost now, obsessively checking social media just to catch a glimpse of the life James is building without me. In his third year of marriage, he and Bianca had twins. He looks so genuinely happy in every photo, but I'm still too bitter and small-minded to ever wish him well. I've started drinking myself into a stupor every night, try to lose myself in dreams of what could have been. In those dreams, I never looked at Ethan. I chose James from the very beginning and never let him go. But the problem with dreams is that you eventually have to wake up. I finally hit my breaking point and lost whatever sanity I had left. As I felt the wind rushing past me while I fell from the bridge, the only thing I felt was a strange sense of relief. I realized then that I really did love James when I first started pursuing him. I had just been too stupid to recognize my own love, mistaking it for irritation until it was far too late. I threw away the only real chance at happiness I ever had, and now it's gone forever. James spent 4 long years in a desperate pursuit only to be played for another 5 until he finally found the woman who had actually saved his life and kept his memory alive in her heart all those years. While some people construct a facade of devotion out of nothing but hollow lies, others choose to wait faithfully with a love that is pure and real. Real love should never be an endless guessing game, and it is certainly never something you should have to beg to receive. You deserve to find the person who makes you realize what it finally feels like to be cherished instead of the one who simply leaves your heart in pieces.